look at this, it's me again. It has been a while, it's been about 2 months. I'm always busy with university stuff, but honestly I could have fit in time for a video or two here and there, but as I'm pretty sure you've all guessed about me by now, I don't like doing videos at all unless I feel like I have something worthwhile to say. You know, there are no obligatory topics on this channel. Either something will motivate me to come on here and ramble, or better yet, you guys could call me out on stuff and my thoughts would be stimulated. You know, it's something that I'm always interested in. But here's something else that I was interested in. I sat down and I watched a WCW pay-per-view from 1992. For those who are unaware of this, WCW in 1992 is commonly known as one of the best in-ring years for a promotion ever. And a claim like that is interesting because chances are the people that say that aren't being seduced by a mainstream feeling show, because WCW in 92 certainly didn't fall under that standard. And the main eventers from the promotion at that time aren't the kind of guys who, when someone tells you the match is good, you see these guys in the match and think to yourself, okay, it was these guys, so they probably wrestled this kind of match. No, there are no assumptions here. I didn't immediately associate this any kind of style with this particular era of WCW. You know, you might think of mid-80s NWA by matches like Magnum TA versus Tully Blanchard in the I Quit Cage match, which I had previously given praise to. Then you get to the late 80s and you're talking about Flair and Steamboat, which, you know, I would find it a bit lethargic if anyone is still trying to say that all three of the famous matches from that series in 1989 are all perfect 5-star classics, but I did really like two of them. And even the 2 out of 3 falls Clash of Champions match, even though it drags like a son of a bitch, I still think it does have some really good stuff in it. So that's kind of what you think about with late 80s NWA, WCW. But when you get to 1992, it's not clear exactly what you're looking for. After watching this show, though, I am most looking forward, myself, to seeing more tag team wrestling from this era. You know, it's nice to know that even with all the awesome All Japan 90s tags, there is still room for other kinds of tag wrestling to shine through and impress you. And the main event of this show, which featured an All Japan 90s tag team, started off feeling quite a bit like that kind of match, actually. Kind of lost the resemblance as it went on, but we will get to that match later. Jumping straight into it, this show opened with the Light Heavyweight Championship match. This was Brian Pillman defending against Scotty Flamingo, better known as Raven. Pillman has a good reputation. You know, I was optimistic about this. I mean, didn't really know what to expect, but I was optimistic about seeing him. And Flamingo, you know, considering I don't remember any standout performance as Raven the Brawler, didn't really expect a lot from Scotty Flamingo, the light heavyweight, because the fact that he spent most of his career as a brawler kind of suggests to you that that's the area that he had the best chance of being good in, and he wasn't really good at it anyway, from what I can remember, you know. So in this match I kind of got what I expected. Flamingo didn't really do much noteworthy. This was pretty much all Pillman. But for a one-man show, it was pretty damn good. You know, Pillman actually showed that he gave a shit by trying to get an advantage out of his submission holds. You know, he would throw some strikes when his opponent was vulnerable. He would go for a pin now and then. If you're going to do opening mat work, that's what you need to do to make it look like you're not wasting the fans' time. You know, Pillman's not a submission wizard by any means. He was still sticking with the headlocks and the arm scissors, but getting an advantage out of those does make a difference to how entertaining the match is. The match did start to drag once it went into back and forth mode, pretty much because Flamingo couldn't keep up with Pillman. But the finish was really nice. You know, it showed also that Pillman was good at bumping as well. You know, he takes a head-on collision with the entrance ramp. It looked pretty vicious, and it put over Flamingo's knee as a credible final move. And that was it. Solid match. I was happy with it. I would give it a solid 3 stars. Next up, we have Ron Simmons versus Taylor Made Man, or Terry Taylor, as I would prefer to think of him. Yeah, I mean, on the surface, the APA seemed like a perfect gimmick for some great brawls, because they were two guys with good muscular frames who were at least solid ass kickers, and yet I can't think of many notable matches at all, you know. I mean, Bradshaw became JBL, and even though to the experienced fan watching that singles run, he'd always be in Stan Hansen's shadow for burly Texan brawlers. But despite that, he did pretty well for himself as far as I can remember. You know, at least one of the Guerrero matches I've watched again in the past year was pretty damn good. So here we have Ron Simmons, whose singles career that I'm not as familiar with. But after watching this, I kind of want to get familiar because this was pretty exciting, all things considered. You know, all of Simmons' offense was really intense, and he had this athletic track and field position going on whenever he was going to charge into an opponent or charge an opponent down. It was pretty fun stuff. The funny thing about this is the commentators were putting over the impact of several moves that Taylor actually landed on his feet for, which to me means either Simmons was pulling off some of the best looking botches I've ever seen, or the commentary itself was misleading. I'm kind of going towards the latter option, even though I'm a fan of both Jim Ross and Jesse Ventura on the announce table. You know, so as far as the match goes, Terry Taylor was fine, I guess, but he didn't really manage to win me over when he was on offense. I pretty much just wanted to see Ron Simmons do more stuff. But Taylor did do well enough for the finish. He dodged enough moves, so when Simmons landed the killer blow, it did feel like a big deal. So Taylor does deserve some credit for the finish. But all in all, this was a very solid Ron Simmons demonstration. Another solid match that I would give 3 stars to. Next up, we have Greg the Hammer Valentine versus Marcus Bagwell. Yeah, did anyone ever think Buff Bagwell was good? I mean, this is the early stage of his career, and he looked pretty average, but considering this guy's reputation, it seems like he actually got worse as the years went by, which is quite an accomplishment, actually. Like I said, he was okay here. This could have been just as solid of a one-man show as the last 2 matches were, but Valentine didn't have as much interesting stuff going on as the last 2 guys that I've given praise to. You know, I give this a passable rating just because Valentine had some nice enough strikes. There was actually a really sweet forearm shot about halfway through this, but these guys didn't really have a whole lot to offer, not much reason for anything happening, so end result, mediocre match, probably the weakest match on the show, actually pretty easily the weakest match on the show. But you know, it was short and not offensive as such, so I'm still in a good mood 3 matches into the show. I've seen at least 2 performances that I thought were really nice, and now we get on to one of the main promoted matches on the show. That was Sting versus Cactus Jack in a Falls Count Anywhere match. Yeah, I really need to watch more stuff so I can determine if my appreciation for Mick Foley, which I have mentioned on this channel before, I hope. I need to figure out whether if he was ever a good worker or whether I'm just really drawn into his underdog persona. And I still think he does that little bit to fight against the notion that it's impossible for wrestlers to be at least solid actors, you know. As far as this match goes, you know, Mick Foley / Cactus Jack was very good at one thing, and that was taking bumps. Not really a surprise, but the reason I say one thing is because he was actually pretty mediocre at everything else, you know. But give credit to Cactus Jack for taking those bumps. It put over Sting's offense hugely. It's a big reason why this match was really, really good. Pretty brutal, which I think is an accomplishment for this particular stipulation. You know, Falls Count Anywhere pretty much implies that they're going to go all around the arena and outside, and you know, what's that an excuse for? I've talked about it before. That lazy crowd brawling routine. I'll grab you by the head, I'll take you for a walk, maybe every 30 seconds or so I'll smash you into something, but you just have to sit tight until I'm ready to do that. Yeah, that stuff sucks. This match was just in the ring and around the ring. It's much better off because of that. Cactus Jack in control, you know, wasn't a lot of fun, unfortunately. Surprisingly, the guy didn't have a lot of brutal offense here. He actually struggled to make his chair shots look violent, which I know sounds completely insane considering that's what he made a career out of doing. But you look at when Sting took a hold of the chair in this match, his chair shots look far better, as far as I'm concerned. When Sting was in charge, the match was very, very good. He was in charge at the start of the match and the finish of the match, which meant that there were more good parts than bad overall, you know. Some great high spots by Sting towards the finish, leading to a final move that felt very decisive. So I think, you know, 3 3/4 is a fair rating here. I thought this was really, really good. Yeah, very, very, very nice stuff. Then we get to a 30-minute Iron Man match. Rick Rude versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I'm sure there are a lot of people that really like this. I did give it a good rating because of the good stuff that was in here, because there was some good stuff in this match. But the overall package of this was not very good. You know, I think a lot of that might have to do with me being just unfamiliar with Rhodes' signature moves. Because, you know, in this match, he really wanted you to believe that his knee strikes were killer. And for me, they didn't even come close to making me think that Rhodes' 2 quick falls at the start were believable at all. You know, Steamboat got the match off to a very strong start. He was targeting Rhodes' ribs. Rhodes' selling was pretty interesting because he had a great muscular frame. So it was interesting to see a guy like that in such a vulnerable position, especially against a guy smaller like Steamboat. You know, Steamboat actually had some really great offense that drove Rhodes to the mat front first, so you know that was good continuity. Everything was going great, and then Rhodes hits one knee strike, just one single knee strike, and that's the first fall of the match. 1, 2, 3. You know, if indeed one of Rhodes' signature moves is just a knee strike, I can accept that up to a point, but only up to a point, because a worker that is exceptionally good at getting his moves over in a match will be able to make it work for someone who's judging him for, you know, more or less the first time. You know, it is possible. There are wrestlers that can do that. And this match told me that Rick Rude was not exceptionally good at that aspect of pro wrestling. You know, his knee strikes, they aren't Takayama quality. So there's not much credit I can give to this. This is a brilliant time, actually, to bring up the finish of the Lesnar-Cena match from Extreme Rules. I've commented in a few places, but I'll say it on camera. Match was fantastic. Absolutely spectacular. I have seen so little 2012 wrestling, but it's going to be really, really hard for anything to beat that as the match of the year. I don't mind anyone who chooses to be annoyed by the winner of that match from a business point of view. If you care about that stuff, you know, more power to you. I just want to see a great match. But there seems to be this undercurrent that because the supposed wrong person won, the ending itself wasn't good. And I would dispute that pretty strongly, all things considered. You know, you watch the ending to that match, you see Cena get a lucky shot in with the steel chain amid Lesnar's domination, and then, and this is why I bring this up, this is what Rick Rude did not do at Beach Blast 1992. This is how you put over a move so strongly that you believe that that one move can end the match. Lucky shot, and then you see the pissed off expression on Cena's face. You see the rage that goes into how Cena sets up that final move. And that is how Cena's single FU on the steel steps was a believable finish. You know? And I think that would be the case for someone who is completely unfamiliar with Cena's signature moves. So it is possible, with a worker of Cena's caliber, to know a credible move on the basis of one performance. This Iron Man match, you know, didn't have that. Rick Rude did not bring that to the table. The match doesn't really get much better once we get past those awkward first few decisions. You know, Rude was sitting in holes, not really putting a lot of intensity behind it. Steamboat's way of making a comeback, you know, nice visuals, you know, flashy stuff. I like the setup for the electric chair position, but nothing that really sold Rude's offense enough to make you feel like you didn't waste your time watching Rude in control of the match. You know, so that's kind of where it doesn't work. The finish was also not very good. You know, a sleeper hold that goes on forever. If you want a hold that's applied for that long to be taken seriously, you have to have had, you know, 1 or 2 attempts at it earlier in the match, and Steamboat escapes. Then the successful application of the hold feels like a big deal. You know, that is true whether or not the sleeper hold was a familiar move in Rude's arsenal. I don't know if it was or not, but that doesn't matter. A hold that's locked in for that long isn't going to be exciting unless you've teased it in advance. Just how I would explain my lack of interest in the finish. And overall, I didn't think the match was that good. You know, like I said, fans of Rick Rude might buy into his stuff more than I did, but I did find it hard to take him seriously. You know, I gave it a good rating because of the strong start, and I did enjoy some of Steamboat's flashy stuff down the stretch, but I'm kind of struggling to remember anything Rick Rude did that I enjoyed. Now we get to the match of the night, and the reason why I am intrigued by WCW's approach to tag team wrestling around this time. 6-man tag, Dustin Rhodes, Barry Windham, and Nikita Koloff, I believe, versus Arn Anderson, Steve Austin, and Bobby Eaton. This is some really, really good tag team wrestling, and there's stuff in here that genuinely sets itself apart from other tag team styles. You know, Anderson, Austin, and Eaton were the three-man well-oiled machine. A lot more frequent tags on their side, whereas guys like Dustin, Rhodes, and especially Koloff were allowed to shine on their own early on. You know, Koloff was especially very expressive in this match. He was able to actually believably take down all three guys at one point. Some of the transitioning here was very spontaneous. You know, there was one point where Anderson was getting worked over, then his opponent, you know, rammed him into the turnbuckles, only for the opponent's head to collide with them as well. So then you're left wondering, you know, wow, can Anderson gain back control now? This is an opening for him, you know. A lot of the transitioning was like that, which is, you know, quite different from when you have the guy just that's getting worked over just fight back of his own accord. It's very interesting. It's that sort of thing that is making me interested in this kind of style of WCW tag match. Eventually it's Dustin Rhodes who is the babyface in peril for, you know, the tag team setting. You know, when WWE uses this format, too often they will have the babyface fight back until he and his opponent are both down in the middle of the ring. Then they're both crawling towards their corners, and you know what happens next. You pretty much know what happens next. You know, it's a classic format, but after you've seen it enough times, it does feel rather tiresome and lazy. In this match, there was, again, a pretty spontaneous hot tag, pretty smartly done. And then, after the hot tag, all 6 guys were in there doing their stuff at different parts of the ring. That whole craziness went on for just the right length of time, and it was really getting pretty exciting. Non-finish, unfortunately, but I still feel very confident in calling this a very, very good tag team match. You know, match of the night for me. And the main event, you know, for the WCW Tag Titles, we have Steve Williams and Terry Gordy, known in all Japan as the Miracle Violence Connection, versus the Steiner brothers, Scott and Rick. You know, like I mentioned earlier, this started off having the look and the feel of an All Japan 90s tag match main event. You know, heavyweight mat work, which is more about showing your brute strength rather than just locking in submissions. Even a couple of head drops here and there. Although, in an All Japan 90s tag, you'd hear commentators screaming to put over those head drops, whereas Ross and Ventura didn't quite know how to react by comparison. But still, this was well on the way to being comfortably beating out the semi-main event for the match of the night. They changed pace quite noticeably about halfway through, in that, you know, Gordy and Williams started really working over Scott Steiner. The crowd died, or more, as for all intents and purposes, they did die. And, you know, I think it was smart work that did deserve at least a little more response, but I think I do understand why the crowd died. I think it was a very, very long workover sequence, and Steiner did not bring the charisma. That's a deal breaker. You know, if you're going to be worked over for that long, you need to show some colour. You need to really make it feel like your predicament is worth caring about, and Scott Steiner did not bring that to this match. You know, crowd did start showing some life when it became obvious that the hot tag was coming. It did come. Rick Steiner was fine at the burst of babyface offense. Then we went to the finish. This finish came so close to pulling off something that is so difficult to do that I almost gave this match the same rating as the last one. You know, this was a 30-minute draw, and when they announced 5 minutes left, you pretty much knew that was going to happen. Basically, you know, Rick Steiner was losing his momentum, and, you know, Gordy and Williams had spent the whole match constantly tagging in one another the whole match, so pretty much the only guy in the match who was fresh was the guy who got a chance to rest, and that was Scott Steiner. He got tagged in with 2 minutes left, did an absolutely wonderful job of making you believe that he was going to win before the time ran out. You know, his offense and his timing was perfect. He hit the perfect final move. If he was booked to win this match, it would have been scary how good his timing was here. But it was a draw, and Steiner had to pretty much let the last 5 seconds run out on purpose. That's how it looked, and I can't pretend that it wasn't awkward. You know, it hurt what was an absolutely wonderful finish up to that point and stopped this from being a great main event. But this is still a match with good stuff in the beginning, the middle, and the end. So that to me is still very, very good pro wrestling. That is WCW Beach Blast 1992. I do recommend it. There was also, you know, there's a lot of good wrestling here. And it was a good introduction for me to what is supposed to be the best era of WCW. And if you would like to see more, reviews of WCW in 92 on this channel, then let me know. If you would like to see me talk about something else, then let me know of that as well. I will talk to you all later.